Hi, my name is Shiam Gallian. I'm a Syrian-American activist from Houston, Texas. My family story is similar to many other people's stories in America. My parents immigrated here from Homs, Syria before the war, so I was born in Houston. I studied biology in college. When I graduated, I left my passion for plant biology and focused on what was happening in Syria and how to build a bridge between Americans and Syrians. I worked locally out of Houston for 2 years because I really believe that local activism is where you can make the most change. I was president of the Houston chapter of the Syrian-American Council. We would put together a panel and give the community a chance to ask questions. Through these panels, we've had some really good discussions because there's some really complicated ideas that we can express when we take the time to talk to each other. Now I work on a campaign called Books Not Bombs. With Books Not Bombs, I work with American students wherever they are to work locally to try and make some kind of tuition fee waiver for Syrian students or just any refugee students in general. We believe that education is what will make the world a better place. With that being said, I wanted to talk a little bit about Representative Tulsi Gabbard. So the reason why Representative Tulsi Gabbard's comments are very concerning is because she kind of represents a lot with what is wrong with the progressive movement on Syria. She's an Iraq War veteran, and I don't believe our country really healed or had any type of accountability after the Iraq War. And a big problem that Syrians have been talking about a lot is that Americans take what happened in Iraq and they use that story and that narrative to understand Syria. And Representative Tulsi Gabbard, because she's a representative, because she's an Iraq War veteran, and because she's a progressive, is one of the people who's really pushing that idea. How is she doing that? She met with Bashar al-Assad. I think many of you know that. And she says that the U.S. involvement in Syria is for regime change. And after Donald Trump's strikes last week on the military airport in Syria, she was tweeting out that we have to resist the U.S. getting entangled in another war. First of all, those statements, U.S. involvement in Syria is for regime change, and that the U.S. is getting involved in another war when they launch the strikes, those are from the Iraq War story. What's happening in Syria is that in 2011 there was a popular revolution, and initially the calls for the revolution were for government reform, and when the government started killing people, the demand became for the regime to step down. So the central conflict in the Syrian conflict is between the regime and the people, and the call for regime change actually came from the people. This is very well documented. And ignoring this fact takes away agency from Syrians, which is racist and colonialist, which are two principles that the progressives are supposed to be against. The second point, that the United States is risking getting entangled in another war with the strikes that Donald Trump launched last week, is false because we have been military involved in Syria since 2014, when the U.S.-led air coalition entered Syrian airspace to bomb ISIS.
The United States and 5 Arab allies took advantage of a dark, moonless night to expand attacks against the Sunni terrorist group into Syria. President Obama stressed this is just the beginning of a long campaign to destroy ISIS.
And if you go to airwars.org, you'll see they've been monitoring the U.S.-led coalition's activities in Syria and Iraq. And they have reports for every month, including reports on civilian death tolls because of U.S. activity. So we are already involved militarily in Syria. It just doesn't look like 2003 Iraq, which makes sense because not every conflict is the same. The reason why it's troubling, she met with Bashar al-Assad. The Assad regime, a lot of people support Bashar al-Assad because they think he stands up to American imperialism. They think that he stands up to Israel, even though Israel wants Bashar al-Assad to stay because they have a somewhat working relationship with him. They know who he is. So it's actually very well documented that the Assad regime has used chemical weapons. One way that the Assad regime has been able to confuse the narrative on Syria is by drawing up images and similarities to the Iraq War, which is why the fact that Tulsi Gabbard met with Bashar al-Assad And the fact that she is evoking the Iraq War in her narrative and the ideas that she's putting out there is very dangerous, and only her constituents can hold her accountable. If we truly want to be anti-war in Syria, then we need to build connections with Syrians on the ground who are for peace and justice and accountability.